Hello and welcome to Lewis Nichols Live Stories in association with Shane Solomon, and I am really excited. We've just been talking lots about Two Doors Down, but the brilliant Doon Mackichan is in the house. Thank you for coming down.
My pleasure, my very great pleasure.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah.
This is Live Stories, and I've read your book, and I've got to say, it's not what I thought the book would be initially, and I was quite shocked in the sense of what you went through very early on in your career in the sense of sexism, the remarks, what was kind of asked of you. And we'll go into that a little bit later. But what I found fascinating is I know when you were growing up, you were kind of bullied sometimes, but you would use comedy and mimicry to try and you were kind of popular because of that. You would mimic the teachers. So when did you kind of first realize you could kind of impersonate other people?
I think when I moved to Scotland when I was 12, and I was a little English girl at the quite a rough Scottish state school in St Andrews, I was definitely hiding in the toilets and people were taking the piss out of my accent, and it wasn't much fun. I couldn't find any friends. It would just seem to be, so I remember being pulled around the corner and be kind of pushed around a bit and thinking, I've got to get out of this, and just going into an impression of Basil Fawlty, which I don't think I'd ever done. I hadn't really done, I'm sure I'd larked around as a kid, but I hadn't gone, oh, I can use this to diffuse this situation, because I'd never needed to do it that much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I launched into Basil Fawlty. Then they were like, who else can you do? And I was like, quick, who can I do? Stanley Baxter, the Queen. So I just used that as a way to diffuse getting bullied. And then my wonderful English teacher said, I think you should join the drama group. And I was like, no, I don't want to be seen. I just want to hide.
Wow.
And he got me to join the drama group. And then I realized, by playing a long succession of sort of English bitches, which everyone found very funny, that people found me funny. And then I started playing lots of different characters. So it was kind of him that got me going, because I was quite shy and quite kind of hiding, really. But I think before that, we used to put on, silly plays in the garden. And I grew up with a load of kids from other countries, because my mum used to fill the house full of students, as it says in my book. So we were always putting on little shows, but it was never impressions that I did or mimicry. But we did have a parrot.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think the parrot totally inspired me. I don't think I'd probably be an actress without the parrot, because he just did everyone's voices. He was free flying, by the way. We didn't keep him in a cage. We let him out one day, and luckily he came back. But he just did impressions of everyone, including sound effects of, you go to the dishwasher machine and he'd make the noise of it opening, or the noise of that, my dad stealing a drink from the...
Wow.
So I became obsessed with sounds and mimicry, and so I think it's all down to the parrot, really.
Do you kind of observe people as well then? So study kind of their body language or mannerisms? Because I guess that's what you need to be able to then kind of mimic people. So do you find yourself kind of looking at it like, oh, I can do that?
All the time, yeah. Right. I'm a secret hound of watching people. I just love it. I think people are endlessly fascinating.
Wow.
And sometimes I used to write down some sort of, but I think what happens when you create a character is that I cherry pick quite a few different people, because my sister thinks that Kathy is her. My sister-in-law thinks it's her. My best mates they go, oh, she's me, isn't she? That's me, isn't it? Particularly if the way someone gets drunk.
Yes.
It's very interesting, the different types of drunks there are. And Kathy's a very particular type of drunk. She does the same sort of thing. She'll dance, then she'll say something offensive, then she'll cry, then she'll high kick, then she'll leave. Pretty much the same thing happens in every episode. She'll say something offensive and have to leave. But so I cherry pick from, it could be someone that I've seen 20 years ago, like sitting on a bench, or that will be a little bit of Kathy as well, because you build up a biography of a character.
Yeah.
You have to know everything about that person. So we do a thing in theatre where someone would hot seat you, and they'd put you down and say you were playing Colin. They'd ask you a million questions of, where did you come? What's your job? What are your family like? Where did you go to school? What's your favourite food? And they fire these questions at you, and you've kind of got to do your own hot seat when you're creating a character, so that you're a real person. So you're not just a kind of a stereotype. Especially Kathy's quite a big character,
very big,
but she's also truthful. So that's the thing. You've got to find vulnerability in someone as big as that. Otherwise, you become a bit just too like a kind of drag character or something. That you're just a persona, whereas if there's vulnerability, it makes it much more funny when they fall, I suppose.
100%. And we're going to explore Kathy later because for people that don't know who Kathy is, they need to find out because it's hilarious. And do you know what I was really interested in the book? I know being a performer wasn't always kind of your dream or ambition. You kind of wanted to be a nurse.
Yeah.
And kind of, so
I know,
where
it's
did the
weird.
change come from wanting to be a nurse to this performer?
Yeah, I wanted to be a nurse. That's interesting. I just used to follow my brother around the house and try and wrap him up in bandages. And we were always catching little, no, rescuing little birds or little puppies. Or our house was full of. My mum was obsessed with animals, so we did grow up with a load of different
Yeah.
animals. So you'd think it would be a vet, but yeah, I wanted to be a nurse. I was very aware of people sort of being a bit sad, a bit lonely. I used to go and visit old people quite a lot when I was little. It's quite sweet. I'd do my rounds of the older because I think they're just on their own.
Yeah.
They're just sitting on their own. What are they doing now? So I had sort of that feeling. But then as I realized probably that laughter, like entertaining, well, it was being in Scotland, it was joining that drama group and doing my first play where I did play a complete bitch, English queen. And everybody just loved it. And then it became more diverse, the sort of parts. But then I didn't act again for ages. So it wasn't something I went, oh, I want to be an actress
Yeah.
ever. And I was never like obsessed. Like, people go, who's your role models? I go, I haven't got a clue. Probably Stanley Baxter or, we grew up with all these
Yeah.
male comics, didn't we? In the 70s, there were no women except Barbara Windsor, and it was all Carry On. So I don't know. I think it came from maybe being shy, and that was a way to get friends, was to make people laugh, and also being bullied a bit in Scotland.
And it worked. That's the thing. You became quite popular and were left alone because people would kind of do that again. Do this for us.
Yeah, and then once I got my confidence, then I could be their friend. But at the
Yeah.
beginning, when you're trying very hard to be liked, it's awful. That's why I
Yeah.
can't bear to see little kids walking to their secondary schools. You know how brutal it is from primary, and then suddenly you see these kids on their own in their secondary school uniforms. You're like, oh no, it's all beginning
Yeah.
now.
Really
And some kids
tough.
are just very good at. My sister turned up at the primary school, and I'd been there. She's about 5 years younger than me, so she had just joined primary, and I was about to leave, and I was a big girl, and I was like, and she went skipping down to the bars, and somebody, I think some boy pushed her off the bars, and she went, "Oi, pick on someone your own size," and got back on the bars, and I thought, my God, it's taken me like 5 years to be able to do that. She was completely feisty, not bothered, never had problems with friendships, never bullied. So it's just character types, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think I was just too wussy.
Well, Kathy would have given him a run for their money.
Yes.
I was shocked to read in the book because it was very male dominated, the comedy scene by far. And it was
Mm.
almost kind of like you had French and Saunders, there was no room for any other leads because you had that box ticked, essentially, is what it
Yeah.
came across like. And the things that were asked of you, sexism or, right, can you lose a bit of the clothing? It sounded awful. And to actually read what you went through and how you must have felt and just go back to that time, obviously compared to now,
Mm.
some of the things that you had to go through, because you do talk about it in the book, you would go to auditions and
Mm.
they would just expect you to be okay with removing clothing,
Yeah.
you know?
I think I was quite key at the beginning. I was quite clear that I didn't want to take my clothes off. And I'd have directors going, well, Leslie Sharp's been naked in this drama's cop series. What's wrong? What's wrong with you? I was made to feel like a real prude. I'd just be like, do you know what? I just don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't think the script merits it. I don't think I need to. I never wanted to be on the slab. I didn't want to be a dead body that was making up, even if I did have a good story
Yeah.
beforehand. So I was always kind of quite clear. I never wanted to do that. And the awful thing was when you get on set, then the pressure would begin. And that was a really cynical thing to do because you're a young actress on a mostly male set. There'd be about maybe 30, 25 guys and 3 women. It hasn't changed that much. I mean, it has a bit, but not enough. And then the director would be like, could you just drop the towel when you leave the sauna? And you'd be
Oh,
like, why do I have to do that? And go, well, we're not going to see anything, but so can you just do it? And you go, well, if you're not going to see anything, I'm not going to do it. And then there'd be this awful standing there with everybody going, God, come on. The
yeah.
crew, the sort of feeling that you were a pain in the ass. And luckily, I just stuck to my guns. I don't quite know what gave me the bravery to do that. I think probably my university was very good at making me realize what feminism was and what standing up for yourself was. And that was a great experience to have that gave me a bit of bravery, probably in the workplace. But the fact it's so rife
Yeah.
was a bit shocking. That was not even seen as a bad thing
That's what's great.
to
And that
ask
was the
someone to
yeah.
remove a towel, even though they'd said they don't want to. And that's just these are just tiny stories of misogyny. They're not like I was assaulted in a, in a lift by, which is many other stories that there are around. I'm
Yeah.
telling quite low level, but very rife, very seamed into the system that was, and unfortunately still is, although people can call it out now. There's QR codes if you're
Yeah.
feeling, there's a lot more. I'm uncomfortable with the way that this, the cameraman is with me on set, or that someone's been touching me, you can report it. Whereas in those days, it was nothing. I didn't even tell my
Yeah.
agent. You wouldn't go, oh, I felt uncomfortable, because I was just used to feeling uncomfortable on set.
But you were so resilient. And what I love, the theme throughout the whole book, you would stand up for yourself every single time. And there was a chapter where you talk about childcare.
Mm,
And you would lose jobs, and you
mm,
would challenge that and say, no, I'm entitled to this. And I love the fact that you would fight your corner
mm.
every single time. And normally the right result would happen as
Yeah.
a result of that. But
Hmm.
not many other people did that. You were kind
No.
of one of the only people that would stand up.
Well, no one brought their babies to set. No one said,
Yeah.
I need extra money for childcare. No one went, I can't afford to do this job and pay her for a nanny. So it was just something that I felt that why are women penalised for having children and then bringing them, wanting to see them while they work? Quite hard to bring a kid to set, but I would come with my nanny, be able to breastfeed if I chose to do that. But no, it's still, there's no provision. There's no like creches. There's no kind
Yeah.
of, here's an extra 3 grand for your childcare. So, I mean, I remember on Two Doors Down, they did pay me childcare because I said, well, I can't afford this.
Yeah.
So that was always good. We always worked that into it. And they were because they wanted me. I think if you're wanted enough, like I'm sure Olivia Colman can say, I'm only going to do a 4-day week because she wants to have a long
Yeah.
weekend with her kids. So some people can have a lot of more power. So the more power you get, the more power you have. But the fact you have to keep fighting was, I don't think the men, my contemporary males, had any of that. They
No,
didn't have
not
to.
at
They didn't
all.
even think about that.
Do you know another thing as well? You mentioned Jim Davidson in the book, and a
Mm,
comment he made when you're walking down a corridor, and it when I read the book, obviously I'm 32, so I wasn't born, but I
mm,
was transported into what that would have been like, and I could
mm.
imagine just the scene and some of the leading men at the time and the comments they would make. So,
Yeah.
have you ever had any of those males later in life say, "Do you know what? I'm sorry for some of the comments I made," or like when they've reflected on their own
No,
behavior? No.
never. No. I mean, luckily, I've never bumped into Jim Davidson ever again. But I've heard some horrible, horrible stories about him. So, I mean, I think what people do is they share stories. So, having read my book, they're like, "Oh my god, I had this awful." But what happens with women is they just shut up about it and go, "Oh, well, I better get on with it because otherwise I won't get that job, or I'm going to be seen as a pain in the ass." I mean,
Yeah.
my agent once did go, "You need to stop talking about all this sort of stuff."
Wow.
That's quite interesting because he was like, "Think you're going to write yourself out of." I've already lost a couple of jobs because of the book. Um, and that was a particular director who knew I didn't name him, but he knew I was talking about him.
Okay, so then
So then the next job that I got, when I realized it was him, I thought, okay, that's not great, but maybe it's 10 years on, we could work at this. But I lost the job.
wow, just
Mm,
because of what you wrote.
hmm.
You mentioned in the book as well the term a feed. So,
A feed, yeah.
you were often the feed role. So what does that look like? What does that mean? So for people that
A
don't know
feed.
the term. 'Cause
Well, in comedy, and probably still now, but there was a lot of sketch shows, and there was like the Hale and Pace show, the Five Alive, which was Brian Connolly. We'd be the sort of, I'd call us the magician's assistants, the girls who would be looking nice and be all dolled up and be the straight ones to the man's punchline.
right,
So then we would
okay.
feed the line, "Oh, I didn't know you," and then he would deliver the joke, bam, and that would be the.
Okay.
So you're basically never getting. You're never the funny one. You're the straight one. You're feeding. So we've been in many shows. Mel and Griff. Male-led shows. Well, I'm talking about the Smack the Pony girls. We were
Oh
all
yeah.
feeds to men's careers for many, many years. So when we get our own show, we can make the straight person, the feed, the funny one, by focusing on that person,
Yeah.
because we were so good at playing that kind of character. Like if you're two bomb disposal experts, it's been written by men, we'll make the one who's the feed the funny one. So we flipped it around. But
Okay. Yeah, because it's mentioned quite a bit in there.
yeah,
that
well,
you
there's
were
a whole
early on.
chapter on the feed. Because I remember one he was a kind of northern comic who was on the circuit, and he got his own he got the TV show with Brian Connolly. I don't think anyone knows who he is now. But he went to me, oh, you know what? He said, you're a great feed. You're a great feed. Meaning you make me look good because you're a good
Okay.
actress, but but you don't want to be a great feed. You want to be a great
Yeah.
comedian. You don't.
Wow. So it's almost like go back in your box. You've done your job.
You've done
Thank
your
you.
job. Yeah.
Back it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was the person?
Peter Piper. Do we know who he is? I mean, I don't know.
You also talk about the Mary Whitehouse experience.
Yeah.
That you did. It wasn't a good experience,
No.
actually.
No.
So tell us a little bit about that and your time on the show. Why didn't you kind of like it as much?
Well, it was Armando Iannucci, who's the great god of comedy, who said, "Oh, I think he's seen me doing stand up." He said, "I think you'd be good on this. These guys, they're like a 4 of 5 sketch. Punt Dennis, David Yell, Rob Newman." And again, I was just brought in as kind of the feed, but I was sold that I was going to get some really good characters, that I was going to get some meaty stuff in their show. And of course we get to it's a radio show, and it was just I was made to feel very much down the ladder of someone who had made it. I was the feed.
Yeah.
And horrible sort of first ever radio show I'd ever done. And I don't really watch telly, so didn't know who Sue Pollard was, and I was asked to do a kind of Sue Pollard impression. I just did a sort of cod northern accent. I didn't do it very well, and it was I was seen as I'd failed, and I remember going and having a cry and thinking, oh, this is awful. But then when they got their telly series out of it, I was like, I don't want to do this. No, we've got really good parts for you. We think you're great. We're going to give you a lot more. And again, we get to the recording and all my stuff is cut because of time. And then it was just a horrible experience being on stage. I remember sitting backstage, it was a live audience, and thinking, oh, I just want to get out of here. But I thought, I'll just stay for the curtain call. I'll just stay for the bow. I'd been in like 6 sketches. And of course, they just did it without me. And then they all came off and just ignored me and just went, oh, the audience were fucking stupid, weren't they? And just slagged off the audience. And I thought, okay, that's not good.
Yeah.
And then I did write a letter to the Guardian's women's page saying, don't employ women in this. You're 4 blokes or 5 blokes. You don't need a woman. And they didn't have a woman in their next series.
Oh, so it made an impact.
It made an impact,
Yeah.
but still, that's not good enough, is
Yeah.
it? Because the women weren't getting their series. So there were a few, not lots, there were a few women on the circuit, and we were pitching ideas all the time, and we hardly ever got stuff picked up. Whereas the men would get pilot after pilot. Frank Skinner had 7 pilots that failed, but he would keep me giving another chance. We were like, can we just do this one show? Can we just try this one thing? So that was that, and they point at French and Saunders and go, well, we've got our girls.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about. That was the feeling of the 80s. It was very Boise and very kind of, alternative comedy was the new rock and roll, and the guys were quids in, and everyone was at Edinburgh, and it was kind of testosterone, slight rock star feel to it.
How do you, when you go through something like that with, the Mary Whitehouse experience, you go through that. Do you ever get that moment where you think, do you know what, this isn't for me? I'm sick of dealing with the same thing time after time. Like, where does that kind of resilience come from, where you just keep going?
Well, I did a few, and then I'd be like, I'm not going to do this anymore. This isn't good for me. It's bad for my confidence, and it's bad for women in general to be seen as someone who's just coming on and going, I'm a silly, stupid tart, or I'm a, the stereotypes that you get pushed into as those roles, again, is really bad, because they're not real women. They're just teacher, ditzy, stupid tart, bossy bitch, sexy cougar, whatever. I think just saying no to those things is the best way to get out of those, and then but what was hard was finding the alternative. So we'd be trying to pitch our own shows, and then thinking, oh, I've got to do this sketch show because I've got no money. And it would be another man's pilot. I'd be another man's pilot.
Yeah. God.
So yeah, it wasn't an easy ride in the 80s.
Do you know, the story I found fascinating was Ricky Gervais, he wanted to pitch to you. Is that right? He
Yeah.
kept kind of sending letters in, and he actually then turned up at a stage door. What was
Yeah.
that like, and what did he pitch? And
Well, we were writing Smack the Pony, and I think we'd done one series maybe. And someone said, "Oh, this guy called Ricky Gervais wants to do some writing. He wants to come and meet you." And we were like, "Well, just get him to send in the sketches." He wasn't really super well known. He'd done something on TV that was what was it? It was a kind of sketch show like the Day to Day, a newsy program, and he was a bit of a buzz around him because he was very funny in it. And we were like, "Oh, just get him to send in the sketches." And then we thought, "Oh, so Ricky's got he wants to come and see you." We were like, "Well, we're busy, so no." And then this happened a few times, and then one day he was actually outside the rehearsal room, and the producer came and she went, "He's outside." And we went, "Oh, fucking hell! What can we can't say? You can't." So we let him in, and he swooped in like he owned the place. He went, "Right, got this great idea. So I'm the doctor, you're the nurses." You know, it was like, again, we were his feeds. He had an idea for his characters that we would support.
Okay.
We were like, we've finally got 3 women doing their own show. First time ever in the history of television. We've got our own sketch show that's all female. So we don't want to do your sketches and then be your feeds. It was so astonishing. I can't imagine any woman going into a male sketch show and going, "I've got a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the lead and you're going to be my feeds." So we were just, I remember, then he left and we were just flabbergasted at the sheer
Ego.
and sort of energy and sort of self-belief, entitlement of him coming into that room. It was almost like he wanted to say, "Look, I know that you need help here. You need a bit of help, and why not come to the master?" It was a bit like that. I've never seen him since, Bo, so
Well,
luckily haven't had to remind him of that, although I have mentioned it a few times.
and Smack the Pony was it was a huge success, and it's hilarious. I mean, there was one sketch that I don't know why it made me laugh. You were like this masseuse, you know, spiritual, and you
Yeah.
start doing all this, and then you kick the patient multiple
Yeah, I
times.
pull her eyebrows quite hard.
It was so funny, but
Yeah.
the show was different. Like I said, it was female led. It had everything you wanted. It was really, really funny, and it kind of, you look at shows like Catherine Tate show now, and you
Yeah.
think, you know, it probably all was inspired by Smack the Pony. So
Yeah.
how did that opportunity come about for you? Because I know originally Amanda Holden, I believe, was meant to be
Well, Amanda was in
pilot.
series 1. Or was it the pilot? Yes, she was in the pilot doing video dates and stuff. I got a feeling it was Julia Davis, who was one of the original 3 girls. Excuse me. And I think she felt that she looked too like Sally, was too similar. So she pulled out. So suddenly, again, it was Armando, the little goblin at the comedy fountain. He just said, "Oh, you should watch this video. Watch this pilot." It was on VHS. And we'd gone to an awards ceremony that Steve was up for Partridge. And it was really late, and I'm thinking, "Oh, God." And he said, "You need to make up your mind like soon because they're going to cast it." He said, "I think you'd be great." And so I watched the pilot, and I thought it was really, really funny and really. But I had also pitched an all-female sketch show like the year before to the same producer, and it felt like karma that it had come back because the video dates were very much my idea in that.
Oh,
And
okay.
so yeah, I think it was just really good karma because I got that, and then I said yes.
And it was a huge success. It really was. It ran.
Yeah.
It ran for 3 series, and you had some specials.
Yeah.
But when you watch the show and how funny it is, you kind of think, why did it stop? You know, it's
Well, we stopped it because it was so exhausting, and that's why it was so good. We didn't have any repeat characters. We had no catchphrases. We couldn't go, "Oh, we'll just reel out a few of,
yeah,
sorry, Arabella, but does my bum look big in this?" We had none of that. So each character was a new character.
yeah.
Plus, we did at least sort of 6 video dates so another 6 people within the characters we were doing. We just went, "Do you know what? We're wrung out. We can't think of any more." Because I remember we'd sit in this basement and improvise for days, and then being filmed. And then Vicky would go, "Look, we've got enough longer sketches. We've got to have more quickies. You know, just really
Yeah.
funny things on the street, like lap dancing a lamppost or something with your shopping, or just funny." And we just were literally like, I cannot think of a single other thing that we haven't already done. So we reached the end of our line with it in terms of the writing of it. we got material from other people as well, and we got often loads of sketches from reject sketches from male shows like not Hale and Pace, like Mel and Griff,
Oh,
stuff that they'd
yeah.
rejected. We'd be sent, and we'd think, okay, we can make that to women surgeons. We can make that to, and then we'd rework those sketches like all day. So I think we just got exhausted by the whole process of impro and comedy, and then we did try again. I think 10 years later to sort of, should we do a smack too? And it did never quite sort of took off. We were all busy on different things. It was just so we are going to do a little we're going to do an interview show at Edinburgh with Kirsty Walk, sort of interviewing us, and we're going to do a couple of we're going to see if we want to do
Oh,
a live show.
amazing.
Yeah, we might do a live show.
Do you know the bit? There's another sketch where it's an office worker. She's singing so out of tune, really, really bad, and then you come in and you sing like an absolutely professional.
And what's annoying is people think that that's dubbed. I'm like, no, that's me singing. That's me singing. It's Nielsen. I can't live if living is without you. Yeah, the singing competition.
She gets so annoyed and
Yeah.
angry. It was well. That's good news about it could potentially.
Well, yeah, we're going to
come
see
back.
if we want to do it, whether it works. Going to write a couple of new sketches and just see whether we've got the appetite to get that on its feet, and whether it works live or whether we want to do something more
Yeah.
filmed. Like, we've got an idea for a film, but we'd love to all work together. We're all kind of chatting. It feels like it's a good time now for us to be developing something between us.
In your book, you're very open, and you give us an insight into a lot of what you've been through. And this is up to you whether you want to talk about this, but your family, and your children you speak about in there.
Yes.
And you went through an awful lot with your son, Louis.
No, I'm happy to talk about that because it'd be nice to help other people who might be going through the same thing. Yeah.
And he had his leukemia battle. And when I read that, I got very emotional because it was the bit where you questioned yourself, like, how did I not notice the symptoms? And you went through this kind of
that was awful,
blaming yourself.
Yeah.
So go back to that moment when you found out that your son was ill.
Yeah.
And he had leukemia, and you were learning all about this new illness. So talk us, kind of through
Well, he
that
was
for you.
9 years old, and he'd just complained of like that his feet were hurting and that his fingers were hurting. We were like, well, he's a footballer. He never stops. He was an ambidextrous. He was signed up to like the mini Chelsea.
Wow.
So he was left foot and right because he's left-footed, he's left-handed. So he was always kicking a ball, and we were like, well, he's just kicked a ball and he's just hurt his feet. And then we noticed his fingers had slightly puffed up, and we were like, okay, well, we'll just go to the doctors. And whoever looks at the bottom of their child's feet, because he had these weird spots on the bottom of his feet, which they didn't even pick up straight away. So they were like, oh, we think it's vasculitis, but we're going to do a blood test and we'll let you know. And of course, he was just getting paler and paler and paler. And we were like, you don't see it when it's incremental.
Yeah.
So then we were in hospital I remember we were in hospital on Christmas Eve for this vasculitis. And I remember going, texting my friends going, oh, fucking bummer, in hospital on Christmas Day with Louis. What a fuck, thinking and we were told we could go home the next day. And we went down to my brother's in Hastings, and and Louis was just very, very tired and very quiet. And we were trying to drag him out sledging, and I remember my friend Helen, who's here, she saw that Louis wasn't enjoying being out, because we were like, oh, we just need to get him out, and she took him to her car and had a hot chocolate with him. I mean, it makes me well up, because I just think, again, why didn't I see? He was so thin and so white, because then we suddenly had a phone call, and it was like, you need to bring him in now. He's got leukemia. We found it in the blood, and then we noticed all these spots on his feet. And so then we were straight in, and then it was just that everything changed. I had a year-old baby. So it was just like we were one night on, one night off. It was like being in a war zone hell. And he's alive, he's in remission.
Yeah.
He's the most amazing young man. I mean, he does things, I think because of what he's been through, he does things for other kids. So he works with disadvantaged kids, he works with kids who are very ill in hospital. Got these amazing music, because he uses music. These suits, these little kind of, that kids who are quite disabled can play music on. So he helps them develop songs and beats and, for their own. So he does, cool. I think that's because, and his little mate has become a doctor. So I think it just affected the whole community. That was what was amazing. And I did a show about it called Prima Donna. 2 years later at Edinburgh, which was I got all his hospital notes, and I just wanted people to know what he'd been through when we're complaining about our loft conversions and all our minutiae. I just wanted people to know what he'd suffered, and it was a brilliant show. It was funny, but it was very moving. I could never do it again. I couldn't.
Well, they initially they didn't want to give you the notes because they thought
No.
you might want to kind of sue the hospital, but you were
Yeah,
like,
they never
no,
give you
yeah.
notes because so many kids get sent home and then they don't make it.
But you kind of explained to them, no, I want to show everyone how amazing you've all been.
I want
And
to big up the hospital.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, they were amazing. The Royal Marsden were incredible.
but it was just that chapter in the book. Again, I said earlier on, you transport yourself because if you've not been through that, you kind of just imagine. And it was just some of the things that was offered to you, like, do you need to see the chaplain? And you just think,
Yeah.
what as a mother you must have gone through to even be
Mm,
asked those questions?
mm,
Because I imagine you just assume, oh my goodness,
mm.
this is not good.
No, you can't quite believe you're in there, and then you think it's a big mistake. So it's amazing what the mind does. Goes into a sort of denial. So for the first week, I kept waiting for a doctor to come in and go, "Oh God, it's all right. Sorry, we've mixed up the bloods. It's not Louis. It's you just keep thinking that that's going to happen, right up until the moment the chemo starts going into your kid, and you're like, oh holy fuck, this is real. That was a terrible moment because you keep thinking there's going to be a reprieve,
Yeah.
and there was no reprieve. And suddenly we were in there and there were a lot of very sick children. I was like, I can't look at any of these kids. I was like, oh my God, oh, this is awful. And by the end of being in a ward with those children for months on end, you begin to see how beautiful they all are.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, you're like, oh my God, that poor kid. Why doesn't the mother shave its hair off? Why is it not it? Why doesn't, I mean, there's a little boy who had this sort of awful hair, but with bald patches. I was like, oh, please, and we've kept in contact with some of the parents, and a lot of parents did lose their kids, and it was just a horrific time.
And I know you went through it afterwards as well. You went through so much kind of depression, and you speak about a moment when your children take you, I think, into the garden and they just say, do you
You
need
need
some medication?
medication.
And
That was a terrible moment.
so going back to that, when you have your children, because normally as a parent, you look after your children.
Yeah.
So for them to take you aside and say, look, we don't think you're very well. What emotions do you go through in that moment?
I was so obviously post hospital, a lot of marriages break up especially in cancer wards. But I mean, in when your kids are terminally kids are ill, terminally ill, but you spend a lot of time in hospital. About 80% of marriages break up. But I remember seeing people in hospital thinking, why can't we be like them, like helping each other?
Yeah.
We were very good at the beginning, and then it gradually became it just smashed the whole thing up because you never see each other and you're absolutely like you're in high alert. So you don't sleep. You're having kind of panic attacks thinking, when I'm at home, my kid's going to die in hospital. So you're in a sort of terrible, and then I'd feel guilty about the two girls at home and want to be with them and my baby. So it was just like, couldn't have been worse. So the marriage broke down, and I was kind of like with living in a flat with three kids. And it was just, I was, yeah, in terrible PTSD. I was constantly getting chest infections. I was ill. It was just trauma making the body ill. And so I remember having a terrible, and then I just used to just scream at them because they were just teenagers being normal teenagers, and I couldn't cope. And they just took me into the garden once and went, Mum, we think you need to be on medication. And I remember seeing a flash of pity go across my son's face, like, this is not a very nice thing to do, is it? But thinking, oh my God, they have no empathy. They're in that teenage thing where they can't go, God, Mum, we need to help you a bit more around the house or do a bit more chores. They were like, nah, we're like out with our friends and we'll come back at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was trying to look after a little one. So
Yeah.
I couldn't parent them. It felt like it was just way too much. It was like I had no lead in my pencil. So then I ended up with pneumonia. So that was the kind of, right, everyone needs to gather around, realize that, your mother's not well. I didn't go on meds. I didn't do any of that, but I just sort of got my body better because I think trauma, seeing all those kids who didn't make it, being with Louis thinking he was going to die, completely goes into your body and causes you various illnesses. So I think stress causes illness. So I think it takes a long time to get over those.
Yeah.
And I should have just gone straight to therapy and had someone say, you've got chronic PTSD. and you need to blah, blah, blah. Here are some tools. There was no time for therapy. There was no time, there was no money. I was like, that was the last thing I was going to do, was going to do something. I'd go and have a massage or take a couple of days away, but that wasn't enough to go, how am I going to cope with bringing up a family when I'm exhausted and now I have a, lung disease?
But you're incredibly strong, and you get that from the book, and it's just, there were so many moments in that, because you, work-wise, it was affected. You weren't working, you couldn't do jobs,
Yeah.
So there was a period of time when you were having to write to people and ask for kind of some financial support because the money wasn't there.
We did ask when Louis first got diagnosed, we asked people to help us with the mortgage. And that was incredible how people give. And the best things were anonymous donations, because then my agent wrote to all her clients and then we'd just get a bit of money in, and that would really move me. It wouldn't be like you'd have to write a thank you letter just to pay our mortgage and to pay because we both had to be, neither of us could work. My ex was an actor as well. So we were both 100% looking after Louis and the girls. So we were covered for about a year. Plus we raised 25 grand to build a garden at the Marsden, a sort of children's cancer garden. Wow. We did that with Blue Peter. So that was people were just, that was incredible, that kind of, and it's really taught me how to never ever say to anyone, is there anything I can do? Because it's just the worst question you could ever. And never put your head on the side and go, how are you?
Yeah.
Because that's really annoying.
One thing I wanted to ask you, it's random, but talking of your daughter, India.
Yeah.
In Two Doors Down, there's an episode where Sophie's talking about her naming her child India.
Yeah.
And you're like, India, was that inspired that you have your own?
Yes, it was.
Right, okay.
Well done. You're such a Two Doors Down nerd. I've never met someone who knows every single line in the whole thing. You could probably do a one-man show that was Two Doors Down, play all the characters and know the script without having to learn it.
But when I read, I was like, oh my God, India. I was like,
yes.
I was like, so was that all because of that?
Yeah, and also if you ever watch Toast of London, I play Matt Berry's agent, and on the little intercom, my PA is called India, so I'm like, India, could you patch him through? Thank you. So I bring my kids and I bring my friends' names into a lot of things. A lot of Smack the Pony. There was my friends' names were in that. People go, what's your name? I go, oh, it's Jackie O'Farrell, and that's just a friend of mine.
Well, just before we go into Two Doors Down, I've got a little game, which is 10 questions all about your career, and we've called it Name That Doon.
I love it.
So we're going to play Name That Doon. We've got some questions.
That's great.
You played Cheryl in which TV series for 3 episodes?
Oh my God. Cheryl, shit. I can't.
3 episodes.
I can't think of what that was.
The Duchess.
Oh, was her name Cheryl?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
In Two Doors Down, what did Kathy bring back from holiday for Beth and Eric?
A lighter.
It was so you could slice it for them and they could eat it.
Oh, it wasn't a ham on.
Yes.
It was ham on ham.
And you brought that into songs. Do you remember?
Yes.
Celebrate and Come On Eileen.
Yes, yes. And actually people do, I was in an off license in Glasgow and she went, are you going to be having that with, I bought some red, are you going to be having that with some ham on ham? Because Kathy thought it was called ham on ham, not just ham on anyway.
You starred in Breaking the Bank. What was the name of your character?
Fuck knows.
Caroline.
I mean, you can't even remember. Oh, yes, and she had to do phone sex. Yes, that's right.
You starred in Another Hood.
Yes.
But in what year?
Very long time ago. Was it medieval? Was it 1694?
Do you want to take a guess with this
I'm really
one?
bad at all this. 1990 something.
2011.
What really was
Yeah.
it? So, yeah, I need to watch that again.
In which year did you appear in Birds of a Feather?
1642. That was one of my first jobs, actually. That was one of my first tellies. Was that in the 90s?
Yes, 1992.
90? I'm going to have no presents for this.
I'm
not going to win anything.
If it's Two Doors Down, you would have had it straight away.
I know, although I thought it was a lighter.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I say pen, don't I? What should we give Michelle for her housewarming?
And I think you gave Christina lighter.
I gave Christina lighter, but I wanted to give Michelle a pen. Do you remember that?
You narrated the TV comedy Connections, but for how many episodes? So you were the narrator.
You are proper nerds. Not a clue in heaven.
33. You'll know this one. How many episodes of Smack the Pony did you star in?
Okay. Well, did we do 3 series or 4? 12, 18, 19?
24.
So there were 3 series and a
3
Christmas
series,
special.
yeah.
But that's 16, that's only 17.
There was some, so you did
18.
3 series and then there were some specials. So it's 24.
Wasn't it 4 series and 1 Christmas special?
I got 3 series.
Okay, you know
We'll
more
have
than
to
I
look
do.
at that.
You know more
This
than I
one,
do.
you might not want to do this.
Okay.
But can you remember and finish off, and I'll start you off. Here comes...
Here comes the Highland Granny, great big tits and a hairy fanny. I didn't want to do that, but I did that for your boyfriend.
Well, it's such... Do you know, people on the Facebook group, that is shared so many times.
Is it?
It was because it was so unexpected. I think it's Willie's...
It's
the wake?
Willie's wake.
And you just come out and you start singing it and you just think, oh my, this is the most Kathy thing that could happen.
Or does Willie come...
With an accordion.
With an accordion,
Yes.
so it's not his wake,
It's
is it?
the birthday.
It's birthday.
Yeah.
I do remember coming going, come
And
on,
then
Willie. And then
you're there doing this.
I do remember sort of trying to get him to headbang to some music as well.
Who did you play in an episode of Mountain Goats?
I've done too much. I don't know.
Norma. And
See, I don't even remember
finally,
Cheryl. Norma, Cheryl. So many women, so little time.
in what year did you do the Good Housekeeping Guide?
Oh, that was with Alan Davis, wasn't it? No idea.
2006.
Well done.
So let's go over to Two Doors Down, because
God.
this show is honestly, it's one of those, when you discover it, you think, how on earth have I not seen this before?
But, it's not everyone's cup of tea. It's quite Marmite. Have you spoke to people who don't like it?
I've never met anyone that...
Well, I suppose I'm talking about my mum's friends who are all in their 80s. Some of them love it, but some of them just don't get it at all. And some people don't love it.
It's one of those shows where you can relate to every character. You've got Christine, the freeloading neighbour that always wants something for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You've then got Kathy and Colin. Kathy's she likes to have a drink. She says what she thinks. Kathy could be Marmite. You've got Beth, the very sweet neighbour, wouldn't say boo to a goose. It just works. So because you were in the pilot, I know Elaine wasn't, but you were in the pilot. So did you have an idea then? I think this is going to go somewhere.
Yeah, I just loved it. But the pilot was shot very differently. It was shot much more like on Steadicam we didn't have the setup of the sitting room. It was a New Year's Eve party and it was all over the place. I loved getting to grips with the accent, but I loved all the characters. I just thought, this is working. This is funny. Yeah, I had a good feeling about it. And also I loved I loved Simon and Gregor. I loved the 2 guys. I was like, I really want to work with you. They were just great.
And do you know what I love? When you watch sitcoms nowadays, that you might laugh once, if you're lucky, in an episode. But with Two Doors Down, you can name multiple things from just one episode that makes you laugh.
Yeah.
And it's just genius. You've got something going on with maybe Kathy and Colin on that sofa.
Yeah.
Then you've got Christine having a conversation with Ian and there's something funny going there.
Yeah.
Then you've got Eric, and it just works. So, but Arabella said it's difficult to film, apparently, because you've got multiple cameras and multiple scenes.
It's a nightmare. It's not fun. And we're very good because we've been together like 7 years now. 8. Actually, the pilot was 9 years ago, I think. If it's a scene that we're all in, including, Ian and Gordon, and it's sometimes up to 40 times we do the same scene. So say I'm here and the sofas are here, and luckily we start the day with my close-up. Then you get it out the way, but then you've got to be on form for everyone else's close-up. And if you happen to have your close-up, which is always done at the end of the day, it's hell, because the words mean nothing because you've said them so many times. So it's really about keeping the ensemble and like going, come on, you can do it. At the beginning, we used to fuck around, and then we realised actually this is so hard when you've got your close-ups at the end of the day. It's absolutely agony because you don't know what the words mean anymore. You've lost all the comedy of it.
Yeah.
The comedy, I hate doing more than like 2 takes. So by the time I've done it 8, 9, 10 times, I've lost it.
What I love about your character is how savage she can be. Just when you think she's being nice to Beth, sometimes, Beth, I just wish I was like you and didn't give a shit what I look like. And you just think, oh my, this poor woman who's just, 1 minute she's smiling and then she just goes...
Yeah, deflates
Thanks.
Beth, doesn't she? She's awful. And then when she comes out and she goes, "Oh, I love your bath. She's had a bath. Do you remember? It's so tiny. And your little scratchy. Can you bring me a towel, Cole? Because her towels are all scratchy."
I was a bit
Yeah,
worried
she's
before
really-
this interview because I know Kathy likes to try and convert a gay guy, you know, whether it's jazz, whether it's
You
corn.
thought I
I
was
thought,
going to be
oh,
like,
here we go.
well, I have mentioned us getting married, so you know, there's a little bit of Kathy in there.
I
But
love
yeah.
it because you just see her go up and give Jazz or Gordon a kiss and, you know, kiss on the lips, and they just look traumatized.
I know, because she's always trying to she's trying to change the gays. She's trying to get them, show them what they're missing.
I wanted to ask, because obviously you've done so many series, and then the announcement came, which broke so many people's hearts,
Yeah.
which was that you were stepping down from the role.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those moments where I just couldn't imagine what the show would look like, because you take away Kathy, then the dynamic between Kathy and Beth's gone.
Yeah.
Christine and Kathy. And
Also Joy playing,
Michelle.
Michelle,
It just, I didn't understand how it was going to work. So what made you step away and take
it was
a break?
it was a family crisis, and there was absolutely no way I could get around it. They were trying very hard to work around me, and I literally could not be away from home. So it was that. And what was awful was, because I'm not on social media, so people would be like, "Oh, there's all sorts of." Everyone thinks you've gone on to do your own projects, like you've just tossed two doors down the side, like you didn't care about it. That was really painful, because it was nothing to do with that. People were like, "Oh, she's gone on to her own things. I don't know why she left." Because I remember being in a cab, and this guy was on the Facebook group, and he was like, "There's a lot of comments about why I've left," but also there was a lot of comments about how much I was missed. So it was that was also the flip side of the not so nice sort of surmisings of where I'd gone and why I'd left it. So coming back was just such a joy, to be able to go, actually, I can come back now. Things have settled, things are better. I can take the time away. So yeah.
Well, that was the thing, because I mean, I wanted to go back just to the series you weren't in. I know you mentioned in a previous interview you did watch a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Was it a bit like, oh, I should be there? This is.
But I physically couldn't be there. It wasn't like, no, I've made a bad career decision at all. It was like, there's no way I could have done that series. But I watched it with interest, thinking, wonder what they're going to do. You know, wonder what they're going to. I didn't feel like I'd come out forever, but then it was treated like I'd stepped away, like that was it. I'm out. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I can't come back now because I've left for one. They're going to just cut me out. I do remember calling everybody the night I really decided I couldn't do it. And what was incredible was every single cast member was so supportive and like, family come first, and we totally get it. No one was like, "Oh, you fucking bitch, what? It's not going to work without you," or whatever. But then the flip side is when I was able to say, "Guys, I can come back." You know, I had to obviously call the writer first. And they were like, "Oh my God, yes, please. We'd absolutely love it if you came back." It was just a really hard time. So I watched it. I remember thinking, I don't really need to watch any more of this. It's quite painful. It's a show that I've grown up with. It's like our baby. And suddenly I've sort of gone, oh, there you are. You have it. I couldn't really watch more than a couple, really.
Did you ever speak to, is it Siobhan who played Anne-Marie?
No.
No, so you've never spoken?
I've never met her. I mean, I've met her, I think, years ago. I think we might have done a radio together. But no, I haven't met her. It would be interesting to meet her.
Was she okay about the fact that she was in it and then out again?
I don't think she wanted to come back.
Okay, so it kind of worked out perfect. And it just...
Absolutely, because I didn't want to go, is it... I did sort of say, can I come back? You know, that was the kind of question. And they were like, God, yes, because Siobhan, you know, it's not like... Because we thought we might have a showdown scene.
Oh,
you know, that's what I was thinking. Well, it would be great if Kathy turned up and Siobhan was there.
You came back like nothing happened. You were like, here I am.
Yeah.
You walk through the door and you think, wow.
With my wheelie case. Yeah. No, that was just a joy to film that. Because A, it was so lovely to be back with everyone. But B, it was written like a one-off drama. It was such a cleverly constructed. That's why like all the episodes are like little mini.
Yeah.
You could watch them stand alone. You wouldn't have to know all the characters, although it does help. So that was just so beautifully written, that episode, I thought.
I think, you know, because when Simon, you know, he tragically died, and you were so close to Simon, you know, and we spoke before, and the news came out, and then obviously the show was left alone, you know, because you couldn't imagine the show carrying on without you know, one of the writers. So when you found out the news, what went through your mind, and did you speak to him kind of recently
prior to the,
prior to his death.
well, we'd only just finished filming. It wasn't that long after we finished filming that he tragically died. I had, I think I'd got even more close to him in that last series, and we did we hated where we were filming so much. It was even worse in the first place, which we were at for like 7 years, which we called the Gulag, because it was just black sheds, old whiskey still, barbed wire, hell. So we used to be like just horrible pigeon shit and just fucking horrible toilets and looking out over a burnt out playground. It was like the worst place in the world. Maybe it helped us doing that filming. But then we were like, oh, we're going to a new studio. It's brand new. And it had been an old chicken factory, and I just could like smell the blood of a million chickens dying. And we hated that place even more. So Simon and I would escape at lunchtime, even though we were not really allowed. And I'd be in full Cathy gear, like, because I couldn't take my wig and everything. And we'd go just to Costa and we'd sit on a high street and watch people just kind of go, oh my God, it's that Cathy. And they went, yeah, they've clocked you. They're coming in. They're getting a toasty. They're sitting down. And we just found it. Who would believe that Cathy was sitting on their high street on a Tuesday morning in the slight rain? So we just did that quite a lot. But it was literally like 6 weeks later, I was in Thailand. It was my birthday, and I thought that someone was calling me that I didn't know what the number was, and it was the producer calling me to tell me. And that was just absolute hell. None of us could believe it. It was just so completely not. We couldn't take it in. So I was away. I wasn't able to go to the funeral either, but we did have a lovely meeting in a pub with all his London friends. Anyway, it was just a tragedy, but yeah.
And I mean, all the fans were heartbroken because he was such a clever writer, a really clever writer, and you just didn't imagine the show going on. But now the news is out that we're going to get another special.
Yes, amazing.
I believe at Christmas.
Yeah.
So when you got the call, was it Gregor that called you and said, look?
Yeah. No, it had been leaked.
Okay.
Oh, no, how did it come about? That we found out about the Christmas special? And then it was leaked. Just suddenly, because it's all been weird, because suddenly there was like, oh my God, how did this get out? Suddenly it was in the Sun. Suddenly people are phoning me up. So I can't actually remember how I found out it was going to go ahead. Oh, I think maybe we got the producer saying Gregor's come up with a Christmas special, and we were just over the moon. And we all just called each other and just said, oh, isn't that wonderful? And then sadly it was leaked in a really weird way, because they wanted to announce it out of respect to Simon's, family. So anyway, yes, that's happening. I think we're going to shoot that in the summer. Hopefully not in the chicken factory.
Do you think potentially we could get a series in the future if this goes well?
I mean, maybe it's a little tentative step into the water. I tend to think it would be better to do a live show as a kind of goodbye.
No, goodbye. Why are we discussing goodbyes?
I don't think it's that easy. And that's, Simon and Gregor used to sit together for about 6 months in a flipping caravan and write it. It's not an easy thing to do. People are like, well, you could write it with Gregor, or, people say to Kieran, you could write, and you can't. It's an incredible amount of work. It takes the magic of those two together. I think it's been really hard for Gregor to get to do it, and he hasn't done it in one go. He's taken a slow, because there's been such pressure on him. He's done it very slowly. So I'm not sure. It would probably take him about 5 years to write a series.
Do you think, because I know before we've all spoken, and I know Simon would sometimes step into a scene and say, actually, I think Christine should say that, or Cathy should do this.
Yeah, we swap lines around,
So do you think, as cast, because you've worked so closely together with Simon, that you might make the suggestions and say, do you know what, I think Simon would probably have us do this, and put your own kind of mark on it?
You've got to be careful when the whole cast start weighing in, because it's just a fucking nightmare. Once everyone thinks that they're the director, it's hell. Simon was pretty much with Ben. They decided, be like, wouldn't it be better? And we'd all chat away in our little gazebos and then come and say, it just takes up so much time. Of course, things can be better, but sometimes you just got to stick to the script. If it was the night before or a few days before and they'd done some changes and you didn't think, you thought, not really sure, I'm not sure I want to say that. I don't think that works. You definitely flag that up.
Yeah.
And there'd be some rewrites the night before. But I think it was more about the direction. It was more about how things were said. It was tiny tonal things that he was such a genius at. And he would come and whisper to each person individually. And we'd go sneak. When he came in, we'd all go sneak, sneak, sneak. Because he didn't want to do it in front of everybody. He'd just give you a quiet note
Yeah.
that would make the scene better. Like be a bit less angry or be more angry or have it in for Michelle or, be flirting with Gordon. And it would be that was the tiny thing. So I think it's more, I don't think there might be the odd line that could work, but that's the magic of the writing.
Have you ever made a suggestion of a change or we should add this and then it happened? So are you
Oh yeah,
responsible?
we've all done that. We've all
Yeah.
like Christy, I think Elaine has done that. Me not being a Glaswegian, I wouldn't know how but she would often go, be much better to say it like this way round. So
Yeah.
she might flip a sentence round but we rarely go, wouldn't it be funny if and come up with a completely new
Yeah.
line?
Just small tweaks.
Yeah, I think it's not like we get onto set and start improvising, which is what I've done in a lot of other types of shows. You might, in your rehearsals, you might improvise and film it and then get some little gems along the way. Like say Kathy and
Yeah.
Colin were to improvise, just them being by themselves in the flat, in their house. But no, it's all there. It's all very well thought out and